Hi, my name is Matt Whitnall, and I'm a graduate assistant with a transnational NGO initiative. I'm undertaking a brief career interview with Mr. David Harvey, who is president and CEO of ProLiteracy, located here in Syracuse. So, Mr. Harvey, thanks for taking the time to sit with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So I'll just start off by asking you to provide us with a brief description of what ProLiteracy does and what it is as an organization.
ProLiteracy is an international organization that works both domestically and around the world, and we are a national and international membership organization in that we support local programs throughout the country that provide basic literacy instruction and educational programs for adults who struggle with basic literacy skills.
Okay, great. So I'm wondering if maybe you could take us through your own career path before actually joining ProLiteracy.
My career path? Well, in college, I went to Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. I did a double major in psychology and political science. I was very interested in the intersection of psychology and how that influences the political system. From there, I went straight to Washington, worked for a congressman from Connecticut on Capitol Hill, which I hated, but I don't regret, because I learned a lot about how the real world of Washington, D.C. operates from an inside perspective, inside congressional perspective. From there, I shifted gears a bit and went to work as a counselor with chronically mentally ill adults in a quarter-way group home. And while I did that, I went back to graduate school, Catholic University of America, to get a master's in social work. I was very interested in that degree because of its broad-based nature and background and education that you get both in counseling and psychotherapy, but also an opportunity to explore doing research and studying social policy specifically.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So, I mean, like you said, your background is extremely broad. So how did you actually end up at ProLiteracy? You know, on the surface, it seems like it's kind of different from this, ProLiteracy.
It is a little bit. It is a little bit different, but not also in terms of. After graduate school, I went to work, basically back at the national level, working on various social policy issues. So I started out working for the Disability Rights Network on various legal. Civil rights issues associated with people with disabilities. So, for example, I worked a lot on the Americans with Disabilities Act that passed in 1990. While there, I took on a project related to kids with HIV that were getting thrown out of public schools because of their condition, and tried to analyze all the legal issues associated with that. And then from there, had an opportunity to work specifically in pediatric AIDS at the national level by founding a national group that did training and technical assistance, but also represented local clinics throughout the U.S. to Congress and the administration. And so making the leap to ProLiteracy is not an enormous change in the sense that my previous organization and ProLiteracy, the current one, have similar types of functions, working at the national level to raise awareness of an issue, doing training and technical assistance, and various other educational programming. So having been at AIDS Alliance for about 11, 12 years as the founder of it, I was recruited by a headhunter, actually, and never heard of ProLiteracy, didn't know anything about the adult literacy crisis in America. But the more I started learning and studying this problem, the more I understood that it is a core social issue that intersects with everything else in terms of the problems we're trying to alleviate in this country. So making that link between literacy and the healthcare world in terms of health literacy was a big aha moment for me. I went through 7, 8 interviews with the board of directors. Initially, I did it because I wanted to gain the experience of going through an interview like this, because I hadn't done it for 13 years. But by the end of the 7 interviews, I got totally sold on the issue and the organization.
So then what actually drew you to ProLiteracy was the mission at hand after learning about it. You know, I'm also wondering, because a lot of your background was in domestic issues and ProLiteracy does have this international component, was that another aspect that kind of attracted you?
Yeah, well, it was a couple of things. I mean, one is it was a growth opportunity in my career. It was going to a much bigger organization than the one I led before. But two, I became really interested in the issue and the mission and why this issue wasn't more on the national radar screen. And I thought, with my experience working in the AIDS movement, that bringing some of those same principles and concepts to this other issue area, I felt more than anything else like I could make a contribution. And then second to that, there was the whole organizational development set of issues and problems the organization was facing, and I was fascinated with thinking about what to do to resolve some of those problems and how to push the organization forward.
Mm-hmm. So, dealing with all of these problems over the past several years, you think you could take us through a typical day? I know it's a difficult question to answer, but...
A typical day. Well, a couple of basic things to know. First of all, I love being a CEO, executive director, president of an organization because of the diversity of responsibilities that you have in a typical day working for an organization like ours. So first of all, I divide my life and my time between Syracuse, New York, and Washington, D.C., where we also have an office. So I have residences in both places, so I kind of live in two cities, which can be kind of crazy. But the typical day might inevitably involves lots of internal meetings, working with teams of staff around various issues. A meeting might happen around an organizing idea for our national conference. I might go from that meeting to a meeting with our finance team to analyze the latest state of our finances and to make some budgetary decisions. It's very often, too, that there'll be a conference call or two throughout the course of the day. One of them might be for a board of directors committee that's dealing with various aspects of the governance of the organization. That could be the finance committee of the board, the nominating committee of the board, the executive committee of the board. And from there, not infrequent calls with ProLiteracy's legal team to talk about various issues we're working on. ProLiteracy is a diverse organization, and we have lots of legal needs, everything from intellectual property rights to contract disputes to personnel issues. So that's a typical day. Inevitably, there may be a lunch meeting with a donor or an evening event to go to where I'm either talking or out to meet certain individuals that I think can benefit the work of the organization.
You gotta get the money.
Got to get the money.
So it seems like in your position, you know, it's such a complex set of responsibilities that you have. You know, your hands are kind of in every component of the organization. So for students that are interested in getting into a career, what kind of skills do you think would you suggest that students develop if they want to pursue such a career?
I think you know, becoming a CEO, executive director of a nonprofit organization, you need some broad-based skills. So having the interest and drive to pursue those interests and passions of yourself that you may have in a diverse area of interests and fields is what you should do. Gaining practical experience in working in different issues, different roles and functions within an organization is only going to give you that understanding and appreciation of what it takes to handle the breadth of responsibilities and tasks associated with being a CEO. So I think my basic advice would be, you know, go and do what you're interested in doing. Try to make that as a broad-based set of experiences and job responsibilities as you can, and love what you're doing, be motivated by an issue, and then inevitably you will rise through the ranks of an organization. So
actually that was my final question, was to kind of ask the general broad career advice for students. So you would say kind of make sure you pursue something that you're passionate about while focusing on a broad range of issues. You got to love what you're doing. I mean, if you're not loving what you're doing, then, you know... Why are you doing it? Exactly. Yeah. So for me, very motivated by social causes. I'm fascinated with the political world. How do you influence the political world? I'm fascinated with group dynamics. A big emphasis of my social work training was on understanding group theory of group dynamics, which is very helpful for when you're supervising staff and supervising groups of staff,
helping a team to progress and handle a task. So though I would say that those things have been kind of central areas for me that has driven my various career moves. That and a bit of being in the right place at the right time, I think.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's worked out.
I hope so. I think so.
Okay, well, thank you again for taking the time to sit down with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.